Hey, welcome back to the Thousand Cranes Kitchen. I'm Chris Walinski. Should probably change the name of this at this point, since I'm never in the kitchen, and we've kind of pivoted on the whole intent of this. But anyway, welcome. What I wanted to do today was talk about a specific paper, and it's from a research group out of Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, and it's from December, so it's a little bit older than what I typically like to talk about. However, this one I missed the first time around, and then somebody did a review of it, and it's actually appalling. It's absolutely disturbing, and it has to do with ultra-processed foods. And yeah, I'm back on that subject just because of what's in here. So let's start off with the grocery store. You know, you walk into the grocery store, you know that the perimeter is the good stuff, right? You've been told that already, and either on the left side or on the right side, you're going to find all the fruits and vegetables. And then as you come along the back, you'll have you know, the butcher and the fresh fish, and then you'll end up in the dairy section, and then finally you'll have some fresh baked goods. And that's pretty much what makes up the perimeter of the store. And then everything inside, in the middle, not everything, but there's a lot of crap in the middle. There's processed and ultra-processed foods. Now, just to make a clarification, processed foods, they're not all bad. You could use some of these to make a healthy meal, a healthy diet. They still have some semblance to real food, meaning that like cheese, unsweetened yogurt, canned vegetables. You know when you open a can of beans that it's beans. And what else would be in there? Smoked salmon, something that you'd still know what it is. And there is some food that's left intact. Ultra-processed foods, on the other hand, it's just garbage. There's no nutritional value. As far as I'm concerned, it's poison. When I walk through a grocery store at this point, it's like that movie, The Matrix. I know you've seen The Matrix. You had to have seen The Matrix. And when I walk through certain aisles, the entire aisle is garbage. And I'm talking about the aisle that's got all the cookies and the crackers and the sugary cereals. None of that is really food. And then you walk down the chip aisle. Most of that's garbage. You got cans of or jars of cheese stuff, and I don't know if there's any cheese in there. I really haven't looked recently, but I guess, you know, pretzels probably not terrible, except that they're made normally with white flour, and white flour, as you know, is going to create an environment of inflammation in your body, which is horrible for cancer, and well, it's just horrible in general. Anyway, let's get back to this. So the ultra-processed foods, just to kind of wrap this up, I guess, is those are things that just have no nutritional value. If you look at the label, they've got at least they got more than a half a dozen ingredients. Usually it's not even close. There's like 15, 20 ingredients. Most of them you don't have in your kitchen in a little spice jar or something like that. And you know, this is chicken nuggets, and this is the food that's convenient. It's really tasty. You'll see commercials for it on TV. Like, you don't see commercials for tomatoes and cheese and bread, but you see lots of commercials for like frozen pizza. And so, you know, this whole area of food, it's basically for convenience, and it's usually cheaper than buying the ingredients on their own, unfortunately. I mean, it should be cheaper to buy the ingredients, but it's cheaper to buy this stuff that's been processed. You know, you get home from work, you reach into your freezer, you pull out a box, and you put that plastic container in your microwave. In 3 minutes, boom, you got yourself you know, some, you know, food. And it's very satisfying, it's filling, but there's no nutritional value at all, which is why these ultra-processed foods are causing obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. And that's why ultra-processed meats are now a class 1 carcinogen, just like smoking is. So this paper, again, Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, basically what it did was They went through about 35,000 participants, and they asked them what kind of foods they eat. More than 50% of our diet now is ultra processed foods. Isn't that amazing? And then I thought, well, how can that be? But then when I think about the square footage in a grocery store, there's way more square footage attributed to ultra processed and processed foods than that little area around the perimeter of the store. The main bulk of the store, other than ant traps and light bulbs, is processed foods. So what they did was they asked people what they ate, and in their homes. So this is, you have a choice. You have more of a choice in your home than you do if you go outside the home. Outside the home, it's something like 67% of the food we eat is ultra processed. But even inside the home, where is it? So back in 2003, which that's a long time ago, we were still at 51%. Now we're up to 54%, but it's even more for certain groups. But what they did find, I would assume that there'd be disparity, because of income. And so what they did was they found only minor differences based on sex, age, race, ethnicity, income, and education. And the two best groups, or I guess two least offensive groups, one was the higher income, which you're like, oh yeah, well sure, they can afford to buy this stuff. They were at 49% of their food is ultra processed. And even better than them, 47% are Hispanic people. Hispanic diets are only 47% ultra processed food. Wonderful. And every research paper we see has caveats or limitations to this study that, we only polled 10 people. The limitations of this study is kind of interesting. It's reporting bias. And what that means is that they feel like people who are eating junk food probably didn't report all of it just out of embarrassment. So the numbers are probably even higher for how much ultra processed food we're eating. So there you have that one. There's one more paper I just want to go over real quickly. And if I were to tell you that, here's the title of the paper: Sugary drinks linked to higher risk of mouth cancer in women. If I were to tell you that women who drink sugary drinks regularly have a 5 times more possibility of having oral cancer, that sounds scary and that sounds significant. And it is. However, these papers can be deceiving. And the reason that I pulled this one out is just recently something came across my one of my feeds, and it was from a doctor who I follow, and he talks about health all the time. And that was kind of his headline. It's very sensationalistic. If you're a woman who drinks sugary drinks, 5 times more risk of oral cancer. The thing is that there's something called clinical relevance. And just because something has like an absolute risk of 5 times more, we really need to know whether it's clinically relevant. And what that means is, those of you who know me know I come from the background of lasers and dentistry. And when we were doing studies in endodontics, root canals, we were trying to figure out what was the best way to kill the bacteria in the canal. And if you've had a root canal and you had to have one either redone or you had to have a tooth removed because you had the root canal, not from fracture but from reinfection, bacteria is the #1 problem with root canals, and that's what causes the pain, it's what causes the swelling. And so everything we do is to try to figure out how to kill the most bacteria. And so there was a time when we were at like 97% bug kill, which was fabulous. And then we went up to 99%, and then we went to 99.97% or something like that. And that was by adding different medicaments. It was adding different wavelengths and different procedures. And the thing was, yeah, it was really cool to go from 99 to 99.97 or whatever it was. But was it clinically significant? And the answer was we didn't know, because what clinically significant means is out of maybe 100 root canals, maybe 5 failed. And with this new technique, now maybe 2 fail or 3 fail, we really couldn't tell. Obviously, it seems better to have the better result, the higher bug kill, but we couldn't tell if it really mattered. And that's really what this is about, is does it matter? So what they did was they polled 162,000 women, because those were my two questions. Number one was, why is it mouth cancer in women? What about the men? But they only asked women. And the second one was their clinical relevance. So what they found was that greater consumption of sugary beverages was tied to an increase in oral cancer risk in women, and this was independent of whether they smoked or drank alcohol. Again, what they compared was women who drank at least one sugary drink a day versus women who drank less than one sugary drink per month. So hardly any at all versus one every single day. And the women who drank one every single day had a 5 times more risk of oral cancer. Again, that sounds bad. However, out of 100,000 population, that equates to 3 more cases. So, you know, you don't want to have even one more case, but it depends on how you report this, how it's interpreted. So I just wanted to say that because I didn't like the sensationalistic tone that was given. So what the authors cautioned was, although the increase in risk appears substantial when reported as a relative value, the absolute baseline risk is low. So do I want you drinking sugary drinks every single day because it doesn't matter? Absolutely not. And you know, as we often end these discussions, I'll leave you with you know, everything in moderation. So until next time, be a blessing in someone's life. Tomorrow, be a blessing in somebody's life. Make a conscious effort to be a blessing to somebody. And until I see you again, be well. Thank you.